Hello, Facebook. We are back. It's Bree and Melissa. We're here for Beyond the Steps, episode 9. We have another great episode today. Lots of great, important topics to tackle for the dance community, and we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. So just hang tight. Invite more of your friends and family to watch with you because we have a lot to learn today. And we'll be right back with you guys in just a moment.
Hey, everybody out there on Facebook Live. I see you coming into the room. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode 9 of Beyond the Steps. We have a super important topic coming up. Please hang in there with us. We'll be live we are live, but we'll be start talking to our guest, Kelly Flansburg, in just a few minutes. We're waiting on everybody to come in here on Facebook as well as in the Zoom room. So just give us about one more minute. Thank you, Elizabeth. She said my earrings are awesome. Thank you. I'm on mute, of course, still navigating Zoom. You would think at this point I would not be navigating Zoom like this, but I absolutely am. So we are here. Welcome everyone to episode 9. We are so excited to have all of you here coming back with us after the holidays. Hopefully hanging in there with us until the next holiday while we tackle some really important topics. So like we said before, this is episode 9. I'm Melissa McDaniel with Turning Point Dance Creations, and this is Bree Zabrowski from Apollo Performance. And we are so excited to be on this journey beyond the steps with you. Our topic today is how can dance educators integrate students on the autism spectrum into their current curriculum? So I know that a lot of us, this is something that has come to light in the dance community, definitely in the last, 10 years or so. And many people have created whole curriculums around students who are on the autism spectrum, who have autism spectrum disorders. So many people have created whole programs. I've seen whole studios that are dedicated to serving this population of students. And some of you may have not even thought of the challenges that face students with autism spectrum disorders. So that's what this show is all about. We want to bring to light some of the challenges that they may face and some of the ways that we can definitely better serve them and explore all of the possibilities of making the studios a welcoming place for kids with autism spectrum disorders and set them up for the greatest level of success possible. So definitely want to get into introducing our guest, Bree.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. And we're excited to have Kelly Flansburg here with us today. Kelly's formal education in creative arts in therapy with a concentration in dance therapy has provided her with a lot of different hands-on experiences with different ages and abilities. As a student, she had the opportunity to work with at-risk adolescent children with autism spectrum disorder, and elderly patients with Parkinson's disease and dementia. In addition, her dance training and dance teaching experience span over 20 years for all ages and abilities. She was fortunate to attend and train at the New York State Summer School of the Arts. She, Earl Mosley, and Streb Extreme Action, and she's a co-founder of East Gay Arts Collective. Her goal as a teacher, dancer, and artist is to share passion for movement and expression with others. So Kelly, again, thank you so much for being here with us today. Tell us about how and why you developed your passion for making dance accessible to people with from all ages to all ability levels. Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be joining you guys today. This is definitely one of my favorite topics to talk about. Obviously, when I was really young, I started dancing a lot of different genres, ballet, modern. And when I graduated high school, I knew that I didn't want to go to a conservatory. I knew I wanted to kind of broaden my spectrum a little bit. And I attended Russell Sage College, which is a super small all girls school in upstate New York. And it happened to be one of 7 schools in the country that offered creative arts and therapy as an undergrad degree. And I was actually originally going in to be a Spanish education major.
Oh my goodness.
Totally.
We just veered off a little bit.
I was like, I went in and I was like, hey, I have all these Spanish credits. And my my advisor was like, I think we have something that you might like really like. I was like, it's like, okay, let's check it out. And I just fell in love with kind of dance therapy and the program in general. And so from there, every semester we worked with a different group of individuals, starting with seniors, at-risk youth. And then my last semester, I worked with children with autism, where we brought almost 15 kids into school, and we worked with them every week for about 2 months for the end of our semester. And I was super fortunate enough to work my senior year with an occupational therapist at the Spotted Zebra Learning Center in upstate New York, which is a preschool that specializes in integrating students with autism spectrum disorder into a normal classroom. So it's just pre-K and kindergarten, and they focus on getting students ready to just go to a public kindergarten class. So I worked closely with an occupational therapist to develop different techniques so kids could pay attention easier in class. And it's just kind of, I absolutely love it. Every student is a puzzle. It's a great learning experience. And then from there, I just kind of grew out of there. I started working at a summer program called Moving Wheels and Heels, where we tried to have a one-on-one adult and child with a disability paired with a intern or a teacher. It was like a 2 full week dance intensive. And then keep going, fast forward. I'm currently the outreach coordinator for Malashak Dance in San Diego, where I kind of do a whole lot of things. I run the outreach program, so I bring teaching artists into schools, which I have done in New York. I've done in upstate New York. I've done in San Diego. I've done all over the place. And I kind of realized being a dance teacher and then being a teaching artist are totally different things.
Yeah.
You know, being a dance teacher, you have the same kids every week. You have them for the full year. You can really work on something. And then being a teaching artist, you're going into a school environment for like an hour and you're not really prepped. And that's kind of when I realized that if you're a teaching artist or a dance educator in any form, you have to be like totally prepped for whatever students come into your classroom. And that's kind of when I realized that being an outreach coordinator, having to train my teaching artists to expect the unexpected when it comes to your classroom and how to better prepare teachers to teach in all forms, all students. So that's why I love talking about this. It's also very exciting.
Yeah, it really is so important because dance isn't regulated as it is. We talk about that a lot on the show. There's not a whole lot of regulation or procedure for very much, right? You taught how you were taught, and it's very cyclical. and so having these guidelines and this framework for how to, because no, it's not cookie cutter. No kid is the same. No person is the same. And so understanding the proper way to address every student that comes in your classroom is important, and it's equally important. Autistic students deserve the same amount of attention as a student that has ADD, who has no learning disability at all. And so it really, it's important that I think we address that. And there's been, I know we're going to touch on this through the show, but there's been some great programs and developments in programming that educators can take advantage of. So I know we're going to highlight a lot of that on this episode. But Melissa, let's dive in, and let's start with get to the good stuff. Oh wait, you're muted. We'll get the hang of it eventually. It's like 9 episodes in.
9 episodes in, and I'm still talking on mute. It's unbelievable. But we've already used this term a few times already, so I definitely want to better define for people who may not understand or know it or even have heard it. So people use the term autism spectrum frequently. Yeah. Kelly, can you just give us a better understanding of what it means, what autism spectrum means? What does that mean? What type of disorders does that include?
Yeah, absolutely. Autism spectrum disorder is a bio-neurological development disability. So it's a disorder that affects the development of the nervous system. And this can happen on a lot of different levels. It's often characterized by repetitive characteristics and patterns of behavior, whether that's socially, communication, interaction. There's often like a difficulty, or like I said, again, some sort of like a pattern. So it affects the normal development of the brain in certain areas. And obviously, as we all know, we have so many different parts of our brain. Right. So this can really be, like we said before, every student is totally different. Every child with autism spectrum disorder is completely different. No child is alike, which is kind of why I love this. It's kind of like a puzzle. So kind of it can stem from, or it can show signs in like nonverbal communication, social interactions, kind of play activities. And again, the hard part is it's different for every student. Right. So it's not like you can have a cookie cutter idea of what this is. Right. And it ranges from mild to extreme. Right. Someone who could just be sitting in a classroom but has to repeated, oh my gosh, English today, has to like repeat the question to themselves over and over again, or they feel like they could write the answer to a question rather than say the answer to a question.
Is it hard to diagnose because it could mimic so many other different issues? It looks the same sometimes as some other things that we may see happen with children.
Absolutely. And I mean, children growing up are so strange. There's so many, I mean, they could come down the stairs one morning and all of a sudden not like Cheerios, or right. Like, and at a young age, it's kind of hard to figure out what it could develop into. So obviously as a parent, everyone watches their children like hawks, every like little tiny thing. And I'm not a mom currently, but I've worked with so many kids in so many different capacities. And so you're obviously looking for everything. And sometimes it goes undiagnosed. Yeah. Until there's maybe a bigger, I don't want to say issue, but until there's something significant that happens, especially in children. Like I said before, every day is different. Every day is new. They're learning new things, and it might not develop until, I don't know, they're learning math in school. Right. And maybe that's something, because math and art are totally different sides of their brain. So like kindergarten is very arts, creative, and then first grade, second grade, they're really developing into math and writing, and that's a whole different side of their brain where that might tend to draw out.
Kelly,
So
what are some of the actual diagnoses that are considered autism spectrum disorders? Because I know I've heard of Asperger's syndrome before. I know there's a number of different ones. What are some of the common ones that we hear a lot?
So what's interesting about that is like we said, it's a spectrum. And so with autism and Asperger's, they're normally like there's like a comorbid, so there's always something attached to it. It tends to be a student might be on the autism spectrum disorder, but they also will most likely have something like ADHD or ADD or dyslexic or something that kind of pairs off with that, which is why the term spectrum is very interesting and very broad sense. But I do like to think of it as a rainbow. You know, there's different shades, there's different colors, there's
And none
different
of them are, I assume that none of them are cut and dry. So you can't really say everything kind of mixes and blends. That's how a spectrum works. So I know I've had a number of students whose parents have disclosed that they do fall somewhere on the spectrum. Are autism spectrum disorders or autistic students, artistic children, young people, is that very common these days, a common diagnosis? Or is it just that now that doctors have a better awareness of it, we're actually diagnosing what needs to be diagnosed rather than people going without the care that they need?
So yeah, the rate of autism is like growing, and I think it's a little bit of this is like a shady area, not like a shady area, but and I don't want to use the word overdiagnosed either, but according to the standards now, 1 out of 54 children are diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, and boys are actually 4 times more likely to have autism than girls. That's just a stat that has been recently evaluated. And again, like you said, I'm not entirely sure if it's just because we know what to look for now. So now parents, and as like, I feel like when even like my mom was growing up or something like that, your kid goes to school and they're doing all these things, and how child development and how child growth wasn't really evaluated as much. And now there's so many resources out there where, you have one little thing and your mom is like, oh, on the internet and looking it up and seeing what happens. So, yeah. And there's, like we said, there's such a spectrum. The word spectrum is in it. There's so many levels. There's so many things behind it. But it's definitely steadily growing.
I don't know if Bree
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the chat. I was just talking on mute because that's what we do here on the show. And we talk so you can't hear us. We're getting lots of feedback, and it's important to point out we're on this journey with you. Every week we say that we are here to learn. We started our journey beyond the steps with episode 1, just like you guys did. And so we're getting some really great feedback. Elizabeth Kessler in our Zoom chat says, for identity first language is best in referring to autistic students is a great way to say it. So autistic students is the proper terminology. And she also agrees, yes, always be prepped for disabled dancers and students. We're everywhere. All autistic people are individuals, and they're different just like everyone else. And also noted that autism is especially hard to diagnose in girls, which is interesting and very consistent with what you just told us, Kelly. And then another comment in Facebook and Zoom is Asperger's technically doesn't exist anymore, but of course there are many people who are diagnosed while it still existed. Some people like the term and others do not. So we go with the term autistic students. Is that the general consensus, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. No, Elizabeth, I love it. She said, I appreciate you learning. This is just an area I know. And that's exactly why we're here, because if we're learning this, there's so many other people out there that need to learn this as well. And that is why we're here. So thank you for all of the great feedback. And also Denise, Eliza on Facebook for your comments as well. Kelly, why do you think it's important that we are intentional with our efforts to integrate autistic students into our curriculum? Why is that important?
So this is kind of like a interesting question. I think I obviously think it's super important. I think that there's a little bit of a gray area, um, specifically when it comes to parents. And so this is my main thought. Sorry for a lot of
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I always think that parents are always looking out for their child, always
Yep.
always want the best. And sometimes parents think that having them in a classroom that is specifically designed for them, where they can mold the environment, mold their curriculum to them, is best. And absolutely, there are certain cases that there is, but also at the same time, I think there's a large part of the child or the student that is feeling the same way, is that they want to feel included. They want to feel like they're part of something. And a lot of times in schools, they're being taken out of the classroom, or they're, they can't go to dance class with Susie Q because their mom is putting them in a special class. So there's that battle too. And I think it's always going to be a little battle, but
Yeah.
I think it is so important, just because, and even as a dancer, you're always learning from people around you. I think that dance is an open form of an expression of like the inner self. Whether it's a ballet class, whether it's a modern class, you're going in and you're doing your best and you're expressing yourself from the inside out, from the outside in, all of the above. You're standing on the side waiting to go across the floor, and you're watching Susie Q do a lovely jeté, and you're like mentally like, oh, I can do that. There's lots of other things that are, I feel like a dance classroom is a learning environment in and of itself. There's so many things happening around you. And I think it's also the teacher's role to have that open environment, have that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but um, every child and every individual desires to be known and acknowledged. And I feel like that's really important, and it's super visible in a dance class. Someone gets a correction and they're like, oh, they're noticing me. Or even if you get a compliment in something that, in a way that you're moving, they're getting that acknowledgement. So I think it's super, super important, especially for a dance class or a dance curriculum.
Yeah, thank you so much. There are studios that offer, as Melissa said, specific classes designed to serve students that are autistic, and as well as other disabilities, learning disabilities or physical disabilities. What are the benefits of having targeted classes versus integrated, or do you think it should all be integrated? And I'd be interested to hear what, Elizabeth, I know you're very knowledgeable about this as well. What is the answer there?
To be honest, I don't think there is a straightforward answer whatsoever. I think both of them have their benefits. Obviously, like we said, targeted classrooms, that you're getting specialized individual attention, a program that's designed for them. They're in a classroom of students that are very similar, especially when it, comes to reading or something like that. They're normally in this small group, very individualized. And then obviously, as we're getting into, integrating them, I feel like almost like a targeted classroom is a great stepping stool. Like when I worked at the preschool, I would take the student out of the classroom, show them how they can kind of move their body to benefit them as they go back in. But the whole goal was to get them to go into a public school and know how to use those skills.
Yeah.
I think that there's a great stepping stool, and not saying that, targeted classrooms are bad or anything like that. But I think that if they're used kind of together to climb this ladder, of success that's built around the child. I think that's kind of the most important.
So then it becomes a responsibility of the studio and the educators to make sure, like we were saying earlier, that the students are, the teachers, I'm sorry, are equipped and prepared to deal with different students with different needs in their classrooms, which
Absolutely.
is the problem. That's what we need to address, is making sure that our teachers are prepped to deal with anything, because there is no regulation, right?
And
Yeah.
I think, and I know that's hard as far as oftentimes it comes to a lot of like funding options, like, oh, we don't
Yeah.
have funding to teach our teachers how to do this, or our dance teachers how to feel better as they go into a different school or a different environment. And I totally understand that, also being on the coordinator side. But I also think that it's like a dance teacher's responsibility in particular, um, because there isn't that regulation, that we should feel like we need to just gain as much knowledge as possible. Or even if you know that you're having a student come into your classroom that is autistic, or that you're having that integrated classroom, I would want to know as much as I can to better my students and also make me feel more comfortable in the classroom. So gaining that knowledge is, like we said, there's so many resources online, books, blah, 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 groups you can join.
And we have
But I
some of
also
those
think,
resources later. You
yes,
provided us with a lot of resources and links that we're going to drop into the chat later for everybody to be able to take advantage of and read and learn. And I know that some students go undiagnosed. There are a number of reasons that diagnoses don't get made for students in general. Usually, sometimes parents feel like there's a stigma that goes around actually being evaluated and diagnosed. I've heard, regardless of what your opinion is on, I don't want to give them, put in their head that they have an automatic disadvantage, those types of things, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they go undiagnosed a lot of times because of parental or societal pressures that stigmatize things like that. So we want to be prepared, and we want to, even if we have a child that is not diagnosed in our class, what are some of the presentations? And I think you mentioned some of them earlier. What are some of the presentations of students that have autistic students that we may see, that we may want to make note of, so that we can make sure that they have an environment that's safe and comfortable for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I think is great about dance classes in particular is that you're catching them out of their normal situation. They're not in a math class, they're not in a reading, language arts, history, whatever class. You're not sitting at a desk in a classroom environment. You're actually getting them to move, and probably in new ways. They're not in PE class where they're not just jumping up and down or stretching or anything like that. You're really trying, let's move today, how we're feeling. That's like this, basic, easy. They don't have to talk. They don't have to do anything. They just move. So at that, in that way, you can also see students, if they avoid eye contact, or if they want to be alone during class, or if they get upset by minor changes, whether it's like a body, maybe they like facing front and you ask everyone to turn to the back, and someone is in denial of that. They like seeing themselves. Sometimes it's often like a body movement. If they like flap their hands or rock you might be able to see that in a classroom setting, but they're told to sit at their desk, sit there. But in a dance class, they're encouraged to do that. But maybe you see a student waiting in line to go across the floor, and you're still seeing that body movement. Maybe they avoid or resist physical contact. If you're teaching in a modern class and someone doesn't want to, balance or push up against someone, that's often a common sign. Sometimes, which is kind of weird for kids, but they're overly safe. So maybe they don't want to, they're very, very cautious. They're like, maybe they don't want to jump as far as they want to jump. Maybe it has to be like a stepping stool.
Mhm.
So there's so many things, and I encourage everyone to obviously go onto the National Autism Association website. There's a huge list and huge amounts of resources. That is like my number one resource that I gave Melissa.
Mhm.
But hyperactivity, impulsivity, short attention spans, these are all things that I think as dance teachers, we can easily see. It's like whether you're doing something at the bar where everyone's supposed to be doing the same thing, you're going to easily be able to see something at a
Right.
kind of at a line. Or if
Right.
you're in an improv movement class and someone does the same thing over and over again.
Well, and I think it's worth noting, it seems to be the answer to a lot of things that we talk about on this show, but open communication with parents is the parents of the child, and the dancers should be extremely important and the top priority, because working together, we can get so much further and make sure that that child's needs are met. And that's going to be different from the next one and the next one and the next one. But at a time when I think there's this tendency for dance studio owners or directors or teachers to push the parents away, because it gets overwhelming at times, and I've been on that side of it too. This is a time more than ever we need to kind of open our door and open that line of communication and nurture and foster that relationship so that the needs of our students are being met.
I also think it's very important that we note that a lot of the things that you just talked about, Kelly, those presentations often come across as behavioral issues.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
It breaks my heart now, especially when I think of when I was dancing, when autistic students were not served probably as well as they are now, or people weren't paying as close attention, because there were so many times that in dance class people were chastised or moved to the back or even asked to sit out or leave because they couldn't stand still, or they wouldn't do a certain movement, or they wouldn't, or even when we were preparing for competitions and things like that, the eye contact and look at the judges and look up, and those things that we were doing, which we actually were going to talk about, I'm probably getting into the last topic a little bit, some of the things that are counterproductive, but we'll get to that later. But it really does, it really is an eye opener for me to see that a lot of those presentations are considered behavioral, or could be considered behavioral, and probably we have been very, very neglectful of those as an industry.
Absolutely. And I mean, I grew up in like a very ballet school. It was like everyone looked the same, did the same. If you weren't the same,
Yeah, it was a problem.
Growing up in that environment, I think really affected the way I think about things now. Even when it comes to my teaching styles, and obviously with the outreach work that I do, trying to help so many teachers. Yeah, definitely.
No, I love that. Thank you so much.
So what are some of the key things, to move into what I just kind of touched on a little bit too early? What are some of the key things to remember when we're doing lesson planning for integrated classes? So not necessarily classes where we have targeted and designed specifically for autistic students, but ones that are combined. So what are some of the things that we can remember to do physically in our classes as we do lesson planning to serve
and this is the time, people out there watching this either now or later, you're going to be planning your schedules for 21-22 very soon. I know that you're already thinking about it and the wheels are turning. So this is the time to integrate a lot of this information into your schedules and make the changes instead of waiting a whole nother year. Let's make 2021 or 21-22 the dance year that we see a lot of this cleared up on our schedules a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. So I want to kind of touch on this in two different ways, just because I know some people might be watching where they're teaching artists, just going into the school, into a school setting, into an integrated classroom, but also just going in for an hour and coming out. And then I also want to touch base as far as like a dance educator, where you're teaching a class all through the year and get to know your students. So as a dance educator, I mean, I guess they're all dance educators.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. So as a dance teacher that has a classroom for a full year, whether it's in school setting or in a studio setting, I think that it's super important to, especially when teaching in an integrated classroom, to kind of rethink and reimagine your classroom. Some of the things that are super important are things that you might think of in a normal classroom. A daily check-in could be something nonverbal and verbal.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come into the classroom, hey, how are you doing? Or maybe they flip a red or a green thing on, lack of word, post it on the wall board, yes. Or, that also, and I'm going to touch on Elizabeth's comment that I noticed, is the consent to touch is totally a big thing as far as kids. So that could also be, I think wall boards are just amazing. So maybe a verbal check-in and a visual check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Flip it on how you're feeling. Yes, I'm okay with being touched. No, I'm not today. And that kind of, you'll get that verbal communication, and then you'll also get that visual.
Mm-hmm.
And that can also appeal, if someone doesn't like talking, they might just walk straight to the board. And that's also going to change how your classroom is run. If you have a lot of kids that come in and are like red, maybe not doing high partnering work that day, or no one's going to feel the need to go into like team building activities
on a red day.
Yeah.
And is it important to note that this can, I mean, that's easy. So throwing up a wall chart like that, or a sign, is something really simple to do. But how cool is that we could do that for all of our students, and not just the ones that are autistic? We can do it for all of our students. And it's just another way to communicate and be in touch, and put our thumb on the pulse of how our students are feeling when they walk in the room, so we can serve their needs better. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things about being or teaching an integrated classroom, is that you don't want anyone else to know that it's integrated. You want them to come in thinking that it's like every other class. Like, this is like just a normal class. And as a teacher, you want them to be like, this is what I do for my classroom. I set up this wall board. Every student has to tell me how they feel as they walk in. So that's like a huge part of integrating a class. I feel like the dance teacher and the teacher themselves always have to be on their toes. We are dance teachers. We are creative. We're not like teaching math where there's only one way to teach 1 + 1. There are so many different ways to teach our one lesson plan. So I always, if you have one lesson plan written down, think of like 3 backup plans. Or not even a backup plan, like 3 ways that you can teach that in one thing. If we're working on shapes, can you create your shape standing up? Or maybe you just want to create your shape drawing it in the air. Or maybe you want to create your shape with a partner. There's so many other ways. And then they can kind of pick and choose. So, and there's like a very fine line between structure and creativity. You want to set a very structured class, meaning this is the time that we warm up. This is the time we're going across the floor. This is the time we're doing our closing circle or sharing. The in between of what happens in each thing is totally creative and totally up to the teacher. But even having on our wall board our time, this is our warm up time from this time to this time, is really going to help students, no matter where they are, connect with that. Oh, maybe it's just a normal student who's like, I really don't like doing bar, but I know that I'm only in bar for 20 minutes. And that, that helps as well. So having a super structured class, remaining creative, and having other options when teaching a lesson plan is huge, even the smallest little thing. And then the other thing is, I think, language. Language is huge as far as being a dance teacher in an integrated class. And it's also kind of how you're brought up in your dance world, as being a ballerina, I was taught, oh no, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Obviously we want to try and stay away from that, and we want to allow students to have the verbal and nonverbal expression. So maybe a student doesn't feel like making a shape today, but maybe they want to describe their shape. Maybe they just want to say, hey, my shape kind of looks like a sailboat, but with like a wavy bottom, or whatever their shape
Yeah.
is. But having them have the option to have a verbal and a nonverbal is always like a kind of a great way to go. And obviously, as a teacher, you always want to set up your classroom for success. So taking every lesson one step at a time, always have a fallback plan, structure your classroom, and stick to that structure. There's always like, oh, we're running a little behind. I'm telling you, there might be that one student that's like, Miss Kelly, no, Miss Kelly, Miss Kelly, Miss Kelly, we're 2 minutes over. Miss Kelly, we're 2 minutes over. And that's really that might totally mess up their day and really throw off your classroom.
Elizabeth said, I am that student.
I have 2 kids on Zoom that do that. They're like, Miss Kelly, we have a minute left. Miss Kelly, I have 5 minutes left. I'm like, oh my God, okay, I'm going.
I mean, it keeps you accountable on the time. You know, we go over sometimes in the dance class, and those are good people to have around.
Yeah, but we have to realize that for some students, that's a world rocker. To have your structure disrupted. For some students, it is, a world destroyer to have to do partner work when, you may have some type of sensory issues that prevent you or have you not wanting to be touched. Elizabeth said, her dance teacher, former instructor, once said, yes, I understand you can't handle being touched today. And also you have to participate in this partner work to get credit for today. Yes. So I'm sure I see you don't want to do it and it's really bad for you, but if you want a grade, you're still going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the crux is of like, old school is you do what I say. This is the way I run my room.
Right.
And you're going to follow my rules because that is respect and that is hard work. And, we're all about discipline. And moving into we know better, we do better. We know so much more now about how to help and serve all of these different types of students and their needs. So I think that's where the challenge is, because again, dancer is steeped in tradition and history. It's really important in this weird dichotomy of artistic evolution, so making sure that we're evolving in our managing our classrooms is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to say movement that has boundaries and structures. That's how I love to describe a dance class.
It's a great saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes, and I would love that it went for like every kind of class. But
Yeah.
I'm not great in history or math. Not my strong suit, so I don't know how that would go.
How does dance benefit autistic students?
Ooh, yes. There's so many, so many. And we kind of talked about this briefly. We're in a dance class, you are catching students not in their normal situations. So that is one of the biggest things I think is either an integrated classroom or a targeted dance class, but you are pushing them outside of their comfort zone or more in their comfort zone. They're like, I love dance because I don't have to talk at all and I can communicate exactly what I need to communicate. So dance is a freedom of expression, which is a really basic tool for healthy development for the body. You gain that body awareness, but also for yourself, for your your brain, everything. You can connect what you're thinking to your body. And that is, portrayed through movement, obviously, through, I love doing an exercise that's super simple with students that, show me how you feel today. Easy thing. They might just stand there, but that might be how they're feeling right in that moment. So it's a great way to communicate with students without using that verbal cueing, but also allowing them to use the verbal cueing when need. Maybe they don't feel like moving today, and we have that. But yeah, movement leads to better orientation, like I said, and body awareness. It pushes them to do new things, new movement patterns. A lot of times, they're just in PE classes and they're jumping up and down. They're learning how to do jumping jacks, but they're not learning I don't know, how to like contract and extend, how to like move their chest without moving the rest of their body. There's so many ways. And then obviously in a dance class, there is that structure naturally. You're having, for example, ballet class, you have bar, you have center, you have across the floor. They're provided with that structure that tends to really help students on the autistic.
Your puppy has
Like,
made intimacy.
thank you. So there's so many benefits. And then one of my biggest things that I love to do is to bring dance into the home. I think it's so important that whether a dance class is for a hobby, whether the student wanted to do it, whether the parent is pushing them to do it, whether it's in their school, I think bringing in either homework assignments or talking to parents and being like, can you do these exercises at home with your student? And it also connects the parent to the student in a whole nother way.
Right.
There's a simple mirroring exercise where if a student is coming home from from school and the parent's like, how's your day? Let's mirror it. The student can take them through their day in this movement, and the parent doesn't have to say anything, but they're following them in this movement, and it connects them in a totally different way.
Right.
So I always love to connect the studio, wherever it may be, to the home. Bring it home, bring the communication all around, like we were said earlier, teacher, parent communication, and all around. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you have any much experience with this, but I have seen in different, specifically in Target, not to big up Target, but I've seen it in Target where they are making clothes that are specifically for autistic children, without seams, without irritating tags, with things that can irritate the skin or it can aggravate sensory issues. What should we keep in mind, in your opinion? And I'm sorry, this is totally not one of the topics but I just came to this as I was talking. What should we keep in mind as we choose costumes for students? Because they got all kind of ruffles and feathers and rhinestones and all types of things.
Itchy sequins and yeah.
Oh my God. I remember some of those costumes being like, oh my God, get this, like the sequins and the straps that would like dig into your arm.
Dig into your skin, right? Or you get a half sequin that got cut off in the seam and it's scratching you. Like all those things are horrible. But what might we want to keep in mind as we choose costumes for our integrated classes to try to make autistic students comfortable?
Yeah, I would actually really just talk to the students. Be like, hey, what do you feel comfortable dancing in? And then even if there's a whole bunch of different answers, finding some, a lot of classrooms or studios have a theme. If you're doing an underwater theme, maybe someone feels more comfortable having seaweed down their arms, and maybe someone just wants to be like a blue fish and is just a blue shirt. So I think there's so many ways around that, but I think the biggest thing is just talking to them. I think in a dance classroom, we're very used to just being kind of told what to do or how to move or what costume to wear. No one ever asked me what costume I wanted to wear. I was just shoved into this scary sequence, sometimes bell-bottom thing. And no one ever asked me, but bringing that into the classroom, being like, hey, what do you guys feel comfortable moving in? Or not even comfortable moving in, being comfortable seen in. That is also huge. Maybe they're not comfortable wearing a leotard and tights on stage in front of people. That is huge. So take it back and just ask them, what do you guys feel? Hey, we have this performance coming up. What are you going to feel most comfortable in expressing yourself, putting yourself out there? What do you want to dance in?
And Elizabeth saying also just being asked would be amazing, even if you are willing to wear something you don't particularly like for 5 minutes on stage. Again, just asking, know, about your comfort with that is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So Kelly, we require,
Homework.
we require a actionable step for our viewers. So what is we want them to do something between now and the next time we see them, which is next Friday. So what's the one action that you want our listeners and viewers to take between now and next week to make progress in this area?
One super simple thing to do, and literally everyone and anyone can do it, is to just go to the National Autism Association website. Literally the easiest thing to do. And it has so many resources, but in particular, they have these things called safety boxes for the parent and for the teacher that will give you, if you just go online, it'll give you so many resources in this little tiny safety box that you can get delivered to you. And sometimes as teachers, you get it for free, depending on your district
Awesome.
and things like that. But you can just go on. And then as for parents, they provide safety boxes for parents to better equip you in the home. There's just a whole bunch of resources on there, steps to take. There's a M chart, which we will talk about in a little bit. Thank you, Melissa, for putting that in there. There's a thing called an M chart where parents can kind of mark off things that they're noticing with their child and then bring it to the doctor. And it can just be very small. They can be doing it every month. It can just be, that's like the easy. There's so many resources on there, and it's good reading. Honestly, they're always up to date. They have great articles on there, but it's just great to kind of better familiarize yourself and always learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right there.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go to a million sources.
Right. Exactly. I'm going to keep popping. Kelly gave us a number of links and resources. I'm going to keep popping those in the chat, even as we close out, because I don't want you to miss out on anything. Elizabeth had a great point. Follow autistic adults on social media. They are the best at explaining what autistic kids need, since they have been there and they've been that autistic kid. So follow. That is such a great idea, Elizabeth. And we have said that a few times in some of our topics. Like, if you actually just follow and listen to the people who have had the life experience that you're talking about,
So much to learn from that. So much.
It's amazing. You can go to any doctor and any book and any website, but if you actually talk to someone who has been and done and seen, it's so much more beneficial to you. And not only they appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, while we're talking about resources, Trisha Gomez and her team over at RhythmWorks Integrative Dance has created a groundbreaking rhythm and dance program designed for those with learning differences and special needs. It is an amazing, amazing program. And I am putting the link here in the chat as well, because we're doing some work with them on the Apollo side, and our shocks are seamless, and so we're talking with them about that. And compression is really good for autistic students and other special needs. And so, but they really do have a great program that caters to youth organizations that specifically teach children. So everybody check that out. You can get certified. They offer scholarships sometimes to get the certification, but gosh, how worth it. And of course, then there's the STEPS 2020 initiative, which has an integrative dance section as part of that. And it's completely free. So if you click the link in our bio on Instagram at Apollo Performance, go to our website, you can take the STEPS 2020 initiative course completely free and at your own pace. So check that out. We hope this episode inspires you to dig deeper into your daily thoughts and habits so that we can be the change we want to see in the world and in our dance community. When you know better, you do better. I'm going to keep saying that, and it's the entire premise of why we do this show. So Melissa and I are definitely on this journey with you. We learned things today from people watching and from obviously Kelly. So we're so grateful for that, and we're always grateful for the knowledge and the expertise of our guest panelists. Kelly, thank you so much for your time and your energy towards all of this. It was so helpful. The recording of this full episodes and all of our episodes are available on Facebook and Apollo's IGTV, both at Apollo Performance, as well as Turning Point Dance Creations, which is at TPDC_on_IG. And if you register to join us on Zoom, you will get a recording of each week's episode emailed to you. We ask you to please share, so we can get the word out and affect real change about all of these topics. We're looking for experts and topics for 2021. We just had a meeting and started scheduling for 2021. We're really excited to bring this back to you in the new year. So if there's something you want to learn about, or a guest, you have some expertise that you want to share and you're interested in being a guest panelist, you can message us info@Apollo Performance, or message us on Facebook or Instagram at Apollo Performance. Thank you again to Kelly Flansburg for joining us today. And as always, thank you to my friend and co-host Melissa McDaniel for being on this journey with me. You all have some homework. We have some homework, and take advantage of the incredible resources that we've put here in the chat, and that Kelly shared with us today and that we've talked about. Join us next Friday for episode 10 as we discuss how can we recognize and work to eliminate racial bias in the dance studio environment. We hope you will join us. That's every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Until then, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Have a good one, guys.
Okay, thank you.